The sky was red with smoke. Fire burned across the battlefield. Bodies lay everywhere, both human and alien. The war had taken everything. Zilara stood in the middle of the ruins, breathing hard. Her silver armor was broken, scratched and stained. With blood some hers, most not. Her long dark hair was messy and stuck to her face. Her pulse beat in her ears like drums. She had been one of the strongest warriors of the Zalari Empire. She had never lost. Until now, a sudden sound behind her metal boots crunching over broken stone. She turned fast, raising her blade. But it was too late. A human soldier stood only 10 steps away. His armor was dark green, covered in dust and cuts. His face was calm, but his eyes, blue and sharp, were locked on her. He was holding a plasma rifle, pointed at her chest. She knew his name. Everyone in the war knew it. Jace Kellen, the ghost of Sector 9. He had defeated entire squads by himself. He had taken out Zalari commanders. And now she was alone. And he was standing in front of her. Zalara raised her sword weakly. Her hand trembled. Jace didn't fire. Not yet. You don't have to do this, she said in a low voice, trying to stay strong. You fought well, Jace said quietly. But it's over. Her knees suddenly felt weak. She dropped her sword. It hit the ground with a heavy clang. She fell to her knees, the dust rising around her. Her eyes met his. Don't kill me, please. The silence after her words was heavy. She had never said those words before. Not in battle. Not in life. Zalari warriors did not beg, but something inside her broke. Jace lowered his rifle slowly. You're not what I expected, he said. She frowned. What do you mean? I've seen monsters in this war. You're not one of them. Zilara looked away. I've done terrible things. I don't deserve mercy. He stepped closer. Not with anger, not with fear, just steady. You're still alive. That means you still have a choice. Zilara looked up again. Her eyes were full of questions. Why was he sparing her? Why was he looking at her like that, like she was someone, not just the enemy? Why? She whispered. Jace didn't answer. He reached into a pouch and pulled out a small device. He pressed it, and a soft hum came from it. A signal. Soon, a ship would come to pick them up. You're my prisoner now, he said simply. But I won't treat you like an animal. Zalara felt something strange. Not fear, not hate, something warm. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope that the ship arrived minutes later. A transport from the human side. Jace helped her stand. She didn't fight. She didn't try to escape. She walked beside him. Other soldiers watched in silence as Jace led the famous Zalari warrior into the ship without cuffs, without chains. Whispers spread like fire. That's her. The blade of Zalari? And he didn't kill her? Inside the ship, Zilara sat down on a bench. Jace sat across from her, his eyes watching but not judging. Thank you, she said, her voice soft. He nodded. And for the first time in her life, Zilara wasn't sure who the real enemy was anymore. The other soldiers stared at Jace like he was crazy. One even reached for his gun. You let her live? He said. That's the blade of Zalari. Jace said nothing, but his grip tightened on his rifle. He was ready to defend her from his own side, if needed. Zilara sat quietly on the cold bench inside the military transport. Her hands rested in her lap. She didn't try to run. She didn't beg. She just watched. Watched the human who spared her life. Jace stood by the door of the ship, saying nothing. But his eyes were sharp, scanning. The other soldiers. He could feel their anger. Their judgment. To them, Zilara was a killer. She had taken many lives, some of them probably friends or brothers of the men on board. And yet, Jace hadn't pulled the trigger. The commanding officer, a tall woman named Sergeant Vale, stepped forward. "Explain yourself, Kellen." "She surrendered," Jace said calmly. "She's not one of ours. She's Zelari elite. They don't surrender. She did." Vale's eyes moved to Zelara. "You better be right. If she so much as blinks wrong, I'll take responsibility," Jace said. The room went silent. Zelara didn't understand. Why was this human protecting her? Why was he risking everything? They flew in silence for another hour. Jace stayed close to her, not as a guard, as a shield. When they arrived at the human base, the guards came with energy cuffs. Jace raised a hand. "She comes with me." "She's not a guest soldier," one guard snapped. "I didn't say she was." Jace replied, "She's my prisoner, my rules." A guard hesitated, then stepped back. Jace led her out of the ship. The base was cold and gray, built from steel and fear. Soldiers walked everywhere. Some stopped when they saw her. Whispers followed. "That's her. Look at the scars. Why is she not chained? She should be dead." Zelara felt every word. She had once made enemies tremble. Now she walked beside the enemy, weak and quiet. Jace led her to a small room in the lower part of the base. No windows. Just a bed, a chair, and a metal door. He stepped inside with her and closed the door. Zelara looked around. "So, this is where I stay?" "For now," he said. She sat on the bed, slowly. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I saw something in your eyes," he replied. She frowned. "Weakness?" "No," Jace said. "A choice." That night, he brought her food. Real food. Not cold rations. Zelara stared at it. "You think I'll trust this?" "If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it back on the field." She ate, slowly, watching him the whole time. "You're strange for a human," she said. "You're strange for a Zelari," he answered. She gave a small laugh. It was dry and bitter. "You know, no one in my life ever told me I fought well." "I did," Jace said. "Because you did." Zelara paused. "Why are you so kind to me?" "I'm not being kind. I'm being fair." She looked down at the food. For a second, she looked small. Tired. Not like a warrior. Not like a killer. Just alone. As he left the room that night, she called out, softly, "Jace?" He turned. "Thank you." He nodded once and closed the door behind him. And in that moment, for the first time in her life, Zelara felt safe. In the hands of the enemy. The chains weren't on her wrists, but she still felt them. Each time a soldier stared, she felt it. Each whisper. Each hateful look. And worst of all, she couldn't even hate them back. Zelara sat in the corner of her small room, knees pulled close to her chest. The food tray was untouched. Her sharp eyes, once filled with pride, now stared at the cold floor. She had fought armies. She had flown warships. She had trained since childhood to be a weapon. But now, she felt nothing like a warrior. Outside the door, Jace argued with Sergeant Vale again. "She's not speaking," Vale said. "Barely eating. That's a risk." "She's not a threat," Jace replied. "You said that before. Now we've got other prisoners refusing orders just because they saw you treat her like a person." "She is a person," Jace said coldly. "She's just lost." Vale threw up her hands. "She's your mess. Fix it, or I will." Later that night, Jace returned. He brought hot soup, a clean cloth, and a warm jacket. Zelara didn't look at him. "You didn't eat yesterday," he said. "I wasn't hungry," she whispered. He sat down on the floor across from her. "You're not in chains. You're not locked behind bars. But you still act like a prisoner." She slowly turned her head. Her voice cracked. "Because I am. Jace was quiet. Then he asked, "Do you want to go back to your people?" Zelara's lips trembled. "They would kill me for failing, for surrendering. I'm no longer a warrior to them. So what do you want?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know. A day later, she was taken for questioning by the base officers. Not torture, not yelling, but sharp questions. Cold rooms. Untrusting. Faces. "How many of you are left? What were your orders? Why did you surrender?" She gave short answers. Careful ones. But even then, they looked at her like she was lying. After the session, they pushed her toward the hallway. Rough hands. Cold silence. And suddenly one soldier muttered, "Traitor." She froze. Then another one spat near her feet. "Monster." Zelara didn't respond. Her hands clenched. Not from anger, but from shame. She knew she deserved it. She had called humans monsters once. She had believed she was better than them. Now, she was the outsider. Not a hero. Not even an enemy. Just broken. That evening, Jace found her sitting alone on the floor again. "You okay?" "I don't know what that means anymore," she said. Jace sat beside her. "You don't have to carry all this alone." She looked at him, confused. "Why do you care?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because once I surrendered too." Her eyes widened. He nodded. "Not in battle. In life, after I lost my brother in the war, I gave up inside. I followed orders. I killed. I survived. But I felt like nothing," Zelara whispered. "That's how I feel now." He looked into her eyes. "Then maybe we're not so different." In that quiet moment, the chains inside her heart loosened, just a little, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel completely alone. Asterisk. That evening, Jace found her sitting alone on the floor again. "You okay?" "I don't know what that means anymore," she said. Jace sat beside her. "You don't have to carry all this alone." She looked at him, confused. "Why do you care?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because once I surrendered too." Her eyes widened. He nodded. "Not in battle. In life. After I lost my brother in the war, I gave up inside. I followed orders. I killed. I survived. But I felt like nothing." Zelara whispered, "That's how I feel now." He looked into her eyes. "And maybe we're not so different." In that quiet moment, the chains inside her heart loosened. Just a little. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel completely alone. Asterisk, she heard it again, his voice in the dark. Not in anger, not in command, but in pain. The great human soldier was crying in his sleep. It was past midnight in the base. The halls were quiet. Cold lights flickered softly above. Most soldiers were asleep except her. Zelara lay on her cot, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't sleep, couldn't rest. Not with all the memories in her head. Explosions, screams, the look in a young soldier's eyes as she struck him down. The sound of her commander's last breath. And now, this room. This silence. And then, she heard it. A sound outside her. Door. Soft. Broken. She moved closer and placed her ear to the steel wall. It was Jace. His voice was low, barely a whisper, but full of pain. No, not her. Don't let her go." Then silence. Zelara blinked. The soldier who had defeated her, the one called Ghost, was having a nightmare, and he was crying. The next morning, she didn't mention it. But something had shifted. Jace brought breakfast as usual, sat beside her, but now she saw him differently. He wasn't just kind. He wasn't just strong. He was hurting. 2. Later that day, Jace handed her a book. "What's this?" she asked. "Earth. Stories," he said. "They helped me once." She held the book like it might break. Her people didn't read for fun. Reading was for war, orders, survival. Not stories. She opened the first page. Simple words. A human child lost in the forest, searching for her mother. The story felt familiar. That night, she asked him something she never expected to say. "Can I stay here? In your room?" Jace raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She looked away. "Your voice. It's not as quiet as you think. I heard you last night." His expression changed. "You had a nightmare," she added gently. Jace didn't speak for a while. Then he nodded. "You can stay. Just sit by the wall. It's safer." She sat on the floor near his bed, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes wide open. Hours passed. Neither of them slept. Then she whispered, "Who was she?" He didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. "My sister," he said. "She joined the med corps. Said she'd be safe behind the lines." Solara stayed. Silent. "She died in a bombing," he said. "No warning. No chance to say goodbye." "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You didn't do it," he said. "But I fought for the ones who did." They sat in silence again, until Zalara whispered something even she didn't expect to say. "I lost someone too. My second in command. My friend since childhood. She died trying to protect me." Jace looked over. "Maybe that's why you surrendered," he said. "You'd lost everything but your life." She nodded slowly. And in that dark room between whispers and grief, two enemies stopped being enemies. Asterisk, he wasn't supposed to care. She was the enemy, a prisoner, a name on a war list. But her voice stayed in his head, even when she wasn't speaking. Jace sat in the training hall, alone, his hands wrapped around a cup of cold water. He had been trying to train for hours, but every time he moved, he saw her face. Lara, the alien warrior, the killer, the one he spared. But now, she wasn't just a prisoner. She was someone he worried about. That was dangerous. Very dangerous. In the medical bay, Zilara sat with a nurse-a-kind, older woman named Sarah. Jace had asked for her help when Zilara refused the standard health check. Zilara sat quietly as Sarah scanned her arm. "You're strong," Sarah said softly. "Stronger than you look." Zilara gave a short smile. "I used to be stronger." "You're still alive," Sarah said. "That means something." Zilara looked down. "He saved me, you know." "Jace." Sarah nodded. "He's done that before. But never like this." "Like what?" Zilara asked. "Like he's saving himself too." That evening, Jace sat across from Zilara again in her room. They shared a meal quietly at first. Until she spoke. "You looked sad today?" "I was thinking," he said. "About the war?" He shook his head. "About you." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What about me?" "You said your people would kill you if you went back." She nodded. "What if?" He paused. "What if?" "You didn't go back?" She stared. "I'm your prisoner." "Not forever," he said. "Maybe you could stay? Start again." She laughed, but it wasn't happy. "On your world? I'm still an alien. A killer." "You're more than that." Jace said. Zalara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Why do you care?" And then, silence, because Jace didn't know how to answer that anymore. Was it guilt? Respect? Something deeper? Every moment he spent with her pulled him further away from the war, and closer to the person behind the armor. The next morning, Jace stood before the command council. "She's showing signs of change," he said. "She's not a threat." "You're too close," Sergeant Vale said sharply. "You're defending her like she's one of us." Jace looked her in the eyes. "Maybe she is now." The room fell quiet. Back in her room, Zilara sat by the wall, holding the Earth storybook. She had read every page, Twice, the last line echoed in her mind. Even in strange lands, kindness can grow like a tree from a seed. She had laughed at that sentence before. Now, she wasn't laughing. Now, she believed it, and that scared her more than anything. Because the voice in her head telling her to trust him, to feel again, to hope again, wasn't her own God. It was the voice of the enemy, and it was now in her heart. Asterisk, the door wasn't locked. No guards, no cuffs. She could leave. But she did single quotes T dot. It was late. The base lights had dimmed to night mode. Most of the soldiers were sleeping, tired from drills and patrols. But Zilara sat awake alone in her room, staring at the open door. Yes, open. Jace had left it that way. No alarm. No watch posted. Just a hallway stretching into shadows. She stood, slowly, quietly. Her bare feet touched the cold metal floor. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Every step could be her escape. No one would stop her. She reached the hallway, and paused. 2 steps more, and she could vanish into the dark. But instead of moving forward, she turned. She looked back at the room. The food tray Jace had brought earlier, the folded blanket, the worn storybook, and suddenly she saw it for what it was: a place of peace, not a prison. She backed away from the hallway and returned to the room, sat on the bed, put her head in her hands. She didn't understand it. She had the chance to run, to be free, but her heart stayed here. That same night, alarms suddenly echoed across the base. Warning, perimeter breach. Section 7. All units respond. Jace was already in motion, gear on, weapon in hand. Zilara stood in the hallway, watching the red lights flash. He saw her. Stay in your room, he said sharply. But she stepped forward. I can help. You're not a soldier anymore, he said. No, she replied. But I can still fight for something. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he tossed her a stun blade. They moved through the smoke-filled corridor. Side by side, asterisk enemy drones had broken through the outer wall. A surprise strike. Panic spread fast, but Jace and Zilara moved with focus. One drone dropped from the ceiling, blades spinning. Zilara reacted first, leaping forward, striking with clean, sharp motion. It fell before it could harm them. Jace stared. You still remember how to fight? She didn't look back. I never forgot. I just needed a reason. After the breach was cleared, the base returned to silence. Soldiers talked about how a former enemy had saved one of their own during the attack. Some were shocked. Some were silent, but none could deny what they saw. Later, Jace and Zilara stood outside under the stars. She looked up. My people trained me to win wars, she said softly, but not what to do after one. He glanced at her. Then maybe it's time to learn. She turned to him. What if I fail again? Jace stepped closer. His voice was quiet. Then you try again. And in that moment, without chains, without orders, without fear, she felt something she thought had died long ago. Freedom. Asterisk. She once carried a blade to make others kneel. Now she stood before leaders, unarmed, not as a soldier, but as a voice. Zilara stood in the center of the grand hall. Clean white walls. Rows of alien and human officers sat silently. All eyes were on her. Not long ago, she would have stood here in chains. A prisoner, a threat. But today, she stood tall, free. No armor, no weapon, just truth and courage. The peace summit had taken weeks to arrange. There had been many arguments on both sides, but one voice had kept rising through it all. Jace Kellen's. And when asked who could speak for the other side, he gave one name. Lara. She took a deep breath and began. I was raised to hate humans. trained to fight them, taught to believe they were nothing but savages. She paused. The room stayed silent. Believed that until one of them spared my life. She looked toward Jace standing near the back, arms crossed, eyes focused. He didn't have to show me kindness, but he did. And because of that, I saw something I never expected. Her voice cracked just slightly. I saw humanity. Some of the human leaders shifted in their seats. A few Zelari. Officers narrowed their eyes, but no one stopped her. Zelara continued. I will never be proud of everything I did in the war. But I can choose what I do now. I can use my voice, my story, to stop more blood from being spilled. She stepped back from the center. I don't ask for forgiveness, only a chance to build something better. The room was still. Then slowly someone began to clap. One, then another. Then the whole hall. It wasn't loud. It wasn't forced. It was honest. And Zelara, once the blade of Zelari, felt her heart break and heal at the same time. Later, outside under the stars, she stood beside Jace. The war didn't end today, she said. No, he agreed. But something else did. What's that? The hate. She turned to him. You really believe that? I do, he said. Because you believed in it first. They stood in silence for a moment, letting the stars speak. Then he added, So, what will you do now? She smiled softly. I was a warrior. I fought with blades and fear. But now, she looked out across the city skyline where lights from both species glowed together. Now, I'll fight with peace. And so, the warrior who once begged for her life became the one who gave others a reason to live. Not through power, not through fear, but through something far stronger. Hope. The end.